Welcome to today's Icehouse Q&A. Very excited about it. Awesome to see people logging in. Great to have Liz Wotherspoon here and Dr. Sven Hansen as our guest today, which is awesome. People are coming in, they're flooding in. Thank you guys. Hi Blair, Andrew. I could try say everyone's names, but it's going to get pretty impossible pretty quickly.
Hey everybody.
Hi everyone. Hi guys. Awesome guys, thanks for jumping on. Got about 30 or so people here, which is great. Hey Gareth, thanks for blowing up the chat as you would. Feel free to use the chat function to talk to each other and to everyone. There's those options in there. Great, good to see people jumping in. So I'm Briar, the community manager at the Icehouse. I've got Liz Wotherspoon with me. I don't know if she needs an introduction. Everyone here will probably know her, but she's the Chief Executive of Growth. Hello, Liz.
Hey, Briar. Hey, everybody.
And we've got our guest, Dr. Sven Hansen, the founder of the Resilience Institute. Hi, Sven. Thank you for joining us.
Be with you again.
It's good. Yes, lots of gold when we talk to you. So I'm looking forward to today. It's going to be good. Thank you guys for jumping on. Awesome to have you with us. So the purpose of today, we really do hope that this Q&A empowers you as business owners and leaders in these uncertain times. There's no doubt that they are uncertain times. And so we wanted to create an opportunity where you can ask Sven, Dr. Sven Hansen, any question that you have around resilience and well-being and get on the spot answers. So we're very thankful to have someone like Sven with his incredible expertise being able to jump on and share his knowledge and insight as he's been chatting to a lot of business owners and leaders at this time. So appreciate that, Sven. So we'll be recording this webinar just so that those that can't make it can tune in and watch later. And we also have Priya, who's in the marketing team at the Icehouse, just posting up a few pieces of content that may be interesting. So today we've also launched our wellness page, which aligns really great with this wellness and resilience Q&A. So Priya is going to post that in the chat so that you can either go there yourself, or it's a really great resource to send to your team if they're struggling during this time with their wellness, well-being and resilience. So it's a good one to have in your back pocket as a business owner and leader. So yeah, a couple of things with how it works. Hopefully the whole Zoom thing isn't new to you at the moment, but we have the chat function below. And we have the Q&A, so you can ask questions live through the chat function or the Q&A, so feel free to do that, and we'll be asking those questions directly to Dr. Sven Hansen in this Q&A, which is great. Liz and I also have some questions up our sleeve that we've already heard from our community, from people that have wanted to ask questions and submitted them sooner to the live recording. So thank you all for doing that, and we'll make sure those are fed through to Sven as well. But firstly, before we kick into it, I wanted to pass you on to Liz, just to say a quick hi and hello from the Icehouse team. So Liz, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Briar. And hi, everybody. It's great to have you with us. What a 3 months it's been. You know, it was August 17th. Yeah, and I think on one level, we were more prepared than maybe we would have been this time last year. But, you know, equally, I think, as Briar alluded to, there's been a much greater level of uncertainty. And, you know, we seem to be going kind of week to week in terms of what we know lies ahead, and that's created some challenges. So it's great to have Sven here with us, you know, to focus on a subject that, as you know, we believe is incredibly important, no matter what, you know, kind of things we're dealing with, but certainly is even more important than ever around how we, you know, channel our own resilience, but also help the people that work with and for us to do the same. So it's great to have you here. As Briar said, I'm going to keep my eye on the Q&A. I think maybe if we say put your questions in the Q&A, then we're not trying to flick between both.
Great idea. Yeah.
You can chitter chatter in the chat, but if you can put questions in the Q&A, I'll keep my eye on that and pose those to Sven as they come up.
Awesome. And yeah, just wanted to reiterate, we're wanting this to be a safe place for business owners and leaders to be able to ask their questions, their pressing questions that they wake up in the morning or go to bed thinking about, and that would really provide some practical advice for them for looking after themselves in this time, but also their team. because that can be a weight for business owners and leaders at this time. So do feel free to ask those questions, because it's a great opportunity to get on the spot practical advice. So to get into it, Dr. Sven Hansen, he may not need a massive introduction as well, especially for those on the Owner Manager program or those alumni. But for those that don't know Sven, Sven is the founder of the Resilience Institute, and the mission of the Resilience Institute is to promote sound physical, emotional, and mental well-being. And now it really is more important than ever. And so the Resilience Institute empowers organizations and leaders who believe that when people grow, their business grows. And so welcome, Sven. It's awesome to have you here. We've done a bit of work together now, and on that, we've really recently recorded a podcast about common themes that leaders and business owners are feeling right now. So if you're wanting to hear more about that, feel free to jump to our website. But I sort of wanted to start there just for a couple minutes. Maybe just tell us about the common themes you're hearing from business owners and leaders, what they're experiencing, and then we'll dive into those questions.
Sure. And Brian, I think it's so important to say at the beginning of this, we need to approach what's happening right now with huge humility. Yeah. You know, the truth is, it's been an extraordinarily abnormal nearly 2 years. And we just don't know what all the consequences will be. So I guess, you know, just stepping into these, you know, I think there are some practical things we can do. And I think some things have actually become quite non-negotiable. You know, you really shouldn't debate them anymore, just execute. But it's a big unknown. That's just my first thought as we go into this. And the second thought is, it's so important, and I've got myself, and I think most of our team have got caught out, because it's become very unequal. Some people and some of your businesses are probably having the time of your lives. You know, you're the right kind of business in the right industry and you're flying. And there are other businesses that are really struggling. The same thing is happening in your organization. Some people are making a really good show of this, and others are really struggling. So, you know, those two things of humility and recognizing diversity of response, I think, are really important in terms of anything we try to answer. So the 5 themes, as best as we could pick up, the one by far, and this was pretty much unanimous across multiple conversations in the last 6 months, is this feeling of exhausted, flat, and tired. People just feel like they're over it. They just can't really get enthusiastic about things. It's very worrying, right? You know, because in a way, leadership is the opposite of depression. So when leaders are feeling flat like that, it's a big issue. Second thing, and I think this is pretty much universal, is concern about people's state of well-being. You know, you haven't had the normal coffees, you haven't connected in ways that were so sort of precious and perhaps taken for granted. So many of the signals about how someone is traveling had just not been present. So that is then multiplied, of course, by the fact that there is quite a bit of concern around mental health. And we know that the incidence of mental health is not in a good place at the moment. So quite reasonably, you know, a wise leader is concerned. And some of them worry about a lot. Third, much more variable, because I think some of us just don't have the energy for it, but it's becoming a very uncertain, you know, COP is just one example. And, you know, the current, as Liz is saying, inability to make a decision in New Zealand is another example. So when people are looking at the future, it's like a really big question mark. Where are we going? You know, how are we going to deal with this? And that can trigger a little bit of anxiety. You've got to be careful. Another one that's, again, less common, but also I think really bothersome for people is a sense that you've had to hunker down into a daily grind. And the vision is kind of gone. And you're trying to rebuild your vision and look at the future, but there's so much uncertainty, it's very difficult to do. So that tension between doing the hard grind that you have to do, but also doing what a leader has to do, which is hold a vision, a purpose, and communicate it. It's a difficult balancing act. And then, of course, as we get back, hopefully into more reasonable work, how do we reconnect? I was on a call last week in Sydney, and Sydney's free. People are having a great time, but you know what? Offices are empty. People can go back to work. There's no problem with it, but they're not. They're choosing to stay at home. Wow, I think it was about 70 people on a call. One of them was in the office, and this is a large multinational. So we just, this last one is really just a concern. How are we going to rebuild connections? How are we going to rebuild culture? How are we going to find ways to collaborate both online and together? Yeah, so those are really the five, Brian.
Yeah, they're so great, and I know I can relate to those definitely in the last 3 months, and know that lots of people on this Q&A will be able to sort of put their hand up maybe to one of those and go, I've felt that at times for sure. And if you are sort of listening to those five and go, oh, guilty, then we had done a podcast, Sven and I, that we've dived deeper into those five and gave really practical ways to sort of re-energize through those five. So definitely check that out. But thank you for that, Sven. That's a great way to sort of kick into it. I love that we can hear the beautiful Noosa birds in the background.
I won't show you the picture.
Yes, please don't tempt us. But yes, Sven is in Noosa, which is pretty cool, which explains the tropical feeling in birds that we can hear. But first question, I'll kick into it, and feel free to. We've got one here, do we? Nice. I'll start with this one I've got here from our community, which is one of our team is really struggling with feeling safe when working at the office, but equally struggling with anxiety, fear, and loneliness by working from home. So she feels really stuck. Are there any suggestions for helping her cope comfortably in one or both of these scenarios? Quite a specific but very real question.
Yeah, isn't it? It's a bit edgy, isn't it? I mean, I think we can all feel what it might be like for that person.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, these are not exactly simple questions, are they? I mean, they're complex with many factors. But, the first thing I think as a leader, talking to those of you on the call, be aware that anxiety levels have really picked up. So, what we call a generalized anxiety disorder is where anxiety and fear are persistent over more than 2 weeks, and they're a little bit out of proportion to the context. That is a mental illness, and is by far the most common mental illness. So, and I don't mean to frighten people here, but when I hear that, that is where I think to have an EAP, and we talked, Brian, about having a doctor you could go and see.
Yep.
I think be humble, right? Be aware that some people are really struggling with it, and you can't just fix it by moving chairs around the office. It's not going to solve the problem. So I think out of that is just be aware that's what EAPs and doctors and health professionals are there for. And as leaders, you want to be a good channel to it. You don't want to try and be a psychiatrist, so you all should have the card, the number, and encourage that person to have a chat to someone. And look, mostly just having a conversation like that will really help someone with that kind of situation.
Yeah, great.
And then you've got a really awkward one, right? With someone like that. And I mean, I've had a few very painful situations there because it's really tricky. If you left at home, of course, your worries and anxieties can just free run because you don't have a social network around you. So you think, oh, this person's anxious at work, I'll give them the opportunity to work from home, but it can actually make them a lot worse. So look, I think, there's no doubt, and lots of organizations are, picking up various wellness programs. I think that makes really good sense. If you think about a typical organization, you've probably got to guesstimate that maybe 18% have a generalized anxiety disorder. Probably 30% will have some form of anxiety. So learning a bit as an organization, what is this thing? How do we name it? How do we know what's severe, what's mild, what I can manage, and then what can I do? That's really important. So, I mean, not everybody needs to go and see a doctor, but I think everyone in a business can benefit from some sound education. And look, businesses are doing this in a rush. there are lots of people investing in this, and I think it's great.
And I think, one of the things that isn't unusual to most of our customers, Sven, is the idea of asking for help and not being afraid to ask for help. I think for some, it doesn't come naturally. They see it as a sign of weakness. I should be able to just tough it out, when in fact, that's not the right approach. And so I guess the encouragement is to be sure that when you need it, you ask for it. So we've got a couple of questions coming through in the Q&A. One is, how do I find motivation when I don't feel it? Are there any exercises that would help with that to set us up for the day?
Lovely question.
Great question.
Yeah, so I think that really resonates with the observation number one, this kind of flatness that people are experiencing. It's definitely real. We've even seen it in our global numbers, on the diagnostics. I would take kind of 3 ways to approach when you're feeling flat, you're not motivated, and you know as a leader you have to. The first is, and it covers a multitude of sins, you have to sort out your daily activity. I mean, yes, it's great to be in Noosa, but the truth is you can get a little bit loopy. All right. So I've had to be double disciplined in terms of making sure that I schedule activities, exercise, get a good night's sleep, take time to relax and breathe. So I think that to me is absolutely the foundation. If a leader does not work out what their minimum daily practice is and execute on it, well, I'm not sure they can be helped. This is a very uncertain time, and I think it's mission critical. You work out what are your fundamentals, get it sorted. And if you can't do it yourself, get a coach.
Great.
I don't mind how you do it, but you have to take care of, almost in order, the activity, move every day 30 minutes, your sleep discipline, manage your breathing, because we're all a little bit agitated, right? So you've got to slow it down. You've got to accumulate 8 minutes a day of that. Taking time to work your emotions, taking time to keep your mind really present. I think that's definitely for me the first thing. The second thing, and we're seeing quite a few people really get a benefit from this, is have some meetings each week. And we talked about this, Brian, the call, where you just connecting with people as people. You just put the agenda aside and, Brian, how are you doing today? Zip, listen. That can be very helpful. And I think those meetings can be kept short and really respectful. But I think the fact that you are showing you care about others, and you can see that others, even a virtual call, care about you, this is a really important next layer up for a leader to execute. And as a leader, you have to put that rhythm in. Many teams, as we discussed, are doing this daily. And then the third thing to think through is just make sure you're spending a little bit of strategic time with your senior team. Just remind yourselves, why did you start this business? Where were you 2 years ago? Where did you want to go? What's got lost? What's got fuzzy? What's changed? How do I need to adapt my strategy and my plan to move through this in a skillful way? And the last thought with this, Bryce, is be patient. This lockdown is going to have, according to many experts, and this is another problem, is we don't have much research on the effects of lockdown, but the lockdown that Auckland's had to put up with will probably have quite long-term consequences. So be patient. Take your time. It's going to take a while for that enthusiasm, motivation to build back up.
Yeah, it's so great. And have grace on yourself, that, everyone takes longer to come out the other side and to deal with what they're dealing. Some people might take a week, others, it might take them a year to get back to how they were feeling prior to all of this. So really brilliant. Thanks, Sven. I've got another question here for you. Where is it? I go to bed stressing about the next day. Can you suggest a bedtime routine? I think that's a really great question.
Yeah, you wouldn't be alone on that one. Well, I mean, the fact that the question's out there, it's important to lots of people, and I think it's a really common symptom. And also it acknowledges the fact that if I'm going to go to bed and my mind is racing and fretting and, concerned about stuff, I'm not going to sleep so well, and I'm not going to be such a great leader tomorrow. So we have to fix it.
Yeah.
So, the routine that every person has to adjust this and make it work for themselves. But, here's how to approach this. First, never negotiate on your wake-up time. Many sleep problems start with your wake-up time. If you can get up with a blue light before dawn, that sets your circadian clock so that when you come to the end of the day, there's a cooling release of melatonin, which is very helpful. So up early, get your exercise. 2, make sure that between 60 and 90 minutes before you go to bed, no devices. If this is really bothering you, I would actually say 2 hours. So then people say, well, what the hell am I going to do if I can't watch Netflix or fiddle on my Facebook? Well, it is tricky. You've got to go and buy books and not electronic books. And reading to me is like a number one gift. Take time to read. It'll often help you into that quiet mind because you're going into a story that's not yours. So in a way, it's a very healthy form of distraction. Take a walk. A walk in the dark as the temperature cools off at the end of the day is a very good way to cool the mind down, cool the core temperature down. Make sure that your house is, turn off all of the LEDs that are blue or white, and use yellow light in the evening. And I guess, then the last thing, and look, you keep the evenings for intimacy, for, playing games as a family, stuff that is more interactive and disconnected from work. And then the last thing to do is to absolutely have a bulletproof relaxation discipline. We've talked about this in so many sessions, and it's in all the notes, and all of you guys are very familiar with it. But you want to execute, even if your mind is peaceful and you're really tired and you're going to sleep well, you still execute on your breathing. So it's relaxed body. I prefer flat in the back. Get your head out of your head into your belly. Watch the inhale, watch the exhale, slow the exhale, and just bring all of your attention into that feeling. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Mind gets busy. No, we're not doing that now. We're breathing. 6 seconds out. 4 seconds in. Tick, 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 tick. No. Back to the breathing. And of course, like a muscle, if you work it, your mind will follow your instructions eventually. For some people, it's a serious arm wrestle. The mind is determined to worry and ruminate and, well, welcome to insanity, because you'll go there. You've got to kill this thing. You've got to overcome the beast and teach your thinking that it is to serve you, not to destroy you. And I think, that kind of sense of a really robust, ritualized relaxation, shutting down the mind process is core. And the goal is, is ideally you should be asleep within 3 minutes, 3 breaths.
Wow. Please, come on. That's
Why not?
awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who arm wrestled with it for a very long time, and I'm reaping the rewards of, keeping the arm wrestle going and eventually, getting there. So I can attest to it.
That's good to hear, Liz. It's a huge win, isn't it?
Huge.
When that mind stops whacking you all night long. It's easy to see I've got to stop hitting myself. It's just, instead of a muscle, it's a thought.
Yeah.
So I've got a question on here, which, is, again, prefaced with high praise for holding this webinar, and thank you, everyone. And this question is a little wine industry specific and wordy, and there's an apology for that. But, as the pandemic first emerged, the wine industry were heading headfirst into, their high pressure harvesting season. And I think that's one of the differences. Sorry, this is me interjecting. That's one of the differences, again, this year. We're coming into a different season. and for a lot of businesses, that's made a difference. So, our ability to operate was in question. Our owners and leaders were in some cases underprepared to deal with the issues effectively. Many leaders on the shop floor were put under immense pressure during this time. The expression here is that I'm deeply concerned there is a lot of undiagnosed damage or trauma that has happened to a lot of industry leaders. And I felt this intensely as the 2021 harvest approached. My anxiety levels were at times almost unmanageable. So, what advice, Sven, would you give to addressing this effectively within, this industry in particular, but it's probably not as unique as maybe he thinks, but and finding a useful way to make meaningful improvement to this collective trauma.
Yeah, I hear that. That question is real. And, the wine industry is not the only industry that's been through some of this. I've seen it with some people who own hotels and tourism businesses, just gutted, right down to a kind of total loss of the normal leadership consciousness, confidence they have.
Yeah.
Last weekend, I attended what was called the Polyvagal Institute conference, virtually, of course. And they are actually one of the groups that are properly measuring these sort of effects. And I must say, they are pretty humble with it. But I think, the message that comes out of this very, very clearly is step one, for senior people in any industry subject to this kind of situation, to be able to make sense of it is the beginning. Because if you can make sense of this, you can work on it. If you can't work out what's going on and why you're anxious or why you're flat or why you're so angry, you are just out of control. So what they describe over and over and over again in the COVID world is that it started with public health alerts and alarms, and we've actually been given, nearly a 2-year crisis. A crisis doesn't last 2 years, but we still call it a crisis. And with this crisis, every news item, how many infections, how many deaths? Then you start thinking, I wonder if that person's got COVID. Maybe I won't go to that party today, or maybe I won't walk with them today. So you start to fear your circle. So the first phase that they describe is understanding that an event like COVID is going to precipitate massive anxiety, that your body is doing what it needs to do to protect you. Oh my gosh, this is dangerous. I better hunker down. I better avoid. I better stop things. So that is your anxiety layer. But eventually, for many of us, we get tired, and you certainly see this happening in many countries at the moment. Then people get angry. They think, look, you've been abused. You've been telling me to do this, and I'm over it. Hell with you. Now I'm doing what I'm going to do, and I'm going to protest and riot, and and then you get all kinds of unpleasant behaviors at home as well. So from fear, we tend to go to anger. You can identify, okay, fear, anxiety, anger, hostility. And the next one, unfortunately, is the sort of freeze reaction, where we go into kind of sadness and a fatigue. So number one is to know it. Number two, and Brian and I talked about this as leaders. If you're concerned about that, I would put your own oxygen mask on first and give your doctor a call. Go have a chat. Work out what's going on. Start with yourself. All right. And I do think, maybe just a final thing, because these are terribly complicated questions, and that they could take a long time for us to work out the best solutions. But I do think, and we are finding, for example, I did a session in the Gold Coast 2 weeks ago with 16 senior leaders. And the entire 3 hours was focused on this question. How do we support each other? How do we understand ourselves? How do we have the conversation with our colleagues, with our direct reports, to actually get to the bottom of this and fix it? It's a whole new ask. Where you're expecting people to be comfortable with terms like anxiety and hostility and depression. They are very easily triggering words. So we're having to learn to have conversations. We're having to learn how to ask good questions of each other, how to be honest, how to make sure that your words align with your facial expressions. So that would be the last one. I'd really recommend you have some senior leadership conversations like we're having here, just to put these out there, make sense of them, look at some different points of view. Not everything will stick for you, but to practice having the conversation.
Yeah, it's great. And I know from our podcast conversation, we talked about how empathy takes energy. It actually, from the leader, it takes energy to step out maybe of your comfort zone as a leader and to have genuine and authentic empathy for your people. A question I've got here, and it's exactly on the same vein, so maybe just any extra thoughts around it, was I find it difficult to talk to my team about well-being. How can I start meaningful conversations? Maybe it is that idea of, hey, it's okay to go to the doctor in this time, like we've discussed then. 9 times out of 10, it's just reassurance. You're okay, this is normal, this person's feeling this too. Maybe there's something else going on there. It's worth being open as a leader and guiding people in the right direction. But any other thoughts around how I can have these meaningful conversations with my team at the moment?
Yeah, I have a somewhat strong view on this. And, I use that little thing, check body, check emotion, check mind.
Great.
And what that means before we get into problems or are concerned about things is we develop a habit of being curious and taking time. How's the weekend being, Brian?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that session last week? What are you thinking about this week? So I'm not really interested in the content as much as I am your physical state, your emotional state, your mental state. But I don't want to come on to you all weird, right? So I've got to think about, how do we have natural conversations around these topics of physical well-being, emotional well-being, mental well-being? I think every leader, if you take time to have those kind of conversations, you will detect who's doing really well and who can support you in supporting the team. You will also start to notice who's struggling.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can target what you do to the nature of the problem without pretending to be a psychiatrist, again, using the EAP or the medical solution. Yeah. And, I think just, to honor the question, it isn't easy. It really isn't easy. I mean, for many of us in business, you just kept feelings and personal stuff out of it. It was about numbers and profits and sales and things like that. The world has changed. And now we've got to teach ourselves to be a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more alert to the richness of being human. And I think that's got to be a good thing. We will come out of that stronger. But my gosh, it's really hard to talk about feelings. You imagine, I'm in a rage. I've just had a fight with my teenage daughter, and I'm trying to have a team meeting, and I'm feeling like hot and all. Now your team is probably going to think you're angry with them. Because that anger from that fight is going to be sitting with you for several hours, radiating out of you. Now, that's tricky, isn't it? So, not only do you have to be interested in the people, but you actually have to be very interested in your check body, check emotion, check mind. And then you've got to work out, and this is an important one, and I hope you're listening to this, but you don't want to go too far, do you? I mean, Brené Brown talks about vulnerable. I think as a leader, if you can feel your anger, it's a really good idea to verbalize it wisely.
Great advice.
To say, look, guys, I had a pretty shaky morning this morning. You know what's going on. I must say, I'm feeling really jacked this morning, so forgive me. Now, you use language that people can hear and understand, but when your body says something and your words reinforce that accurately, everyone relaxes.
Yes.
Very important, and again, this is a big ask. We're asking people to step up to a whole new level of self-awareness.
I love that you said that, because I read a quote saying people prefer leaders that are real versus right. And I think it's that, obviously it's always a balance and there's a tension between the two. But I think just what you said, where a leader gets on a call and goes, hey guys, I've had a rough morning, bear with me, but and goes into it, everyone just goes, okay, I can have a rough morning and still show up to work as my true self. And that's so important. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Liz, before
I was just going to say, it's about, the kind of modeling that you want to encourage others to do, to own the emotion you're feeling and then be able to express it in a way that just means they say, oh, okay, so I'm not the only one who feels like this right now. Even he feels like this, and, he's the boss. So, again, I think it just helps. And I think in these conversations, I guess, and the question is, do you agree, Sven? In these conversations, you have to be careful because you don't necessarily have all the answers, and you shouldn't pretend to. This is uncharted territory for most of us. And so, you need to be conscious when you are getting in over your head in terms of the conversation and how you respond to that, because it isn't about having all the answers.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, maybe two little add-ons to that perspective, Liz. One might be, there will be times that you are so upset. You should actually just have the courage to pull the plug. Guys, it's not a good morning. Can we pick it up tomorrow?
Great. Because
the damage you might do when you're upset like that, it just radiates through your people. And the second comment to that, Liz, is your language is so important. I mean, again, it's like asking a serious responsibility here, but as leaders, pick your words carefully. Particularly when there's emotion either in you or in the people you're trying to lead. Even planning your conversations is really important. To actually have a script, so there's no surprises for anyone. And, because there are a zillion ways to say angry or sad or afraid. Choose them carefully.
Wow.
I've got a really pragmatic question which takes us back to sleep. Someone who's quite interested in how you've worked out to the minute how much sleep time you actually need per night. This person says she sleeps many hours, and according to her Fitbit, she sleeps well, but she wakes up tired. And, I guess the question is that, part of what's going on, or can you explain how she might be able to figure out how many hours sleep is the right amount?
Well, if, look, let's face, you guys are leaders, right? Your capacity to manage the day, seize the day, lead the day is very, very important. Sleep is a mission critical component of that. So first thing is, I would not be afraid to go and get yourself checked out. There are two options in the New Zealand market. There's the Sleep Well clinics.
Great.
They really do a good job, Sleep Well clinics, and they are less expensive. But if you need to, I would even go and see a sleep specialist. So the advantage of that is they give you proper measurement, and you go through a night, whether it's in a lab or at home with various devices on you, and you'll come back and you'll think, okay, I know what's going on, and you can see the structure of your sleep accurately. Fitbit may not be the best answer for accurate views. If you want it's worked for me and for many people I've tried to help through this, is if you just look at your sleep structure over the nights after about 2 weeks of monitoring. Notice when you drop into deep sleep and notice roughly when you're waking up. And you'll probably start to get a sense of what your body wants. You will see there's a time that if you fall asleep, then you drop into the deep sleep cycle quickly. Take note of that. That's a key signal. And then the second thing is to notice, when you wake up, how sort of quick is that wake up? Or do you wake up and fall asleep again, wake up and fall asleep? That end is a big problem. Some people oversleep. And often that fatigue is from too much sleep. And I think, while there are lots of sleep specialists going on about how you must get at least 8 hours, well, in our community, that's hard to defend. So, when you talk to business people who've become more alert to this, certainly it's heading down maybe even to 6.5 hours. So somewhere between 6.5 hours and 8 hours is the sweet spot. And if you don't want to get it properly assessed, I would practice. See what you like on 6.5 hours. If that, that makes me a bit too agitated. As I move to 7 and a bit hours, things are much better. If I let myself go past 7.5 hours, no value.
That's great. That's awesome. I don't know if you've seen, there's another one here in the actual Q&A, just saying, you wisely mentioned a whole new level of awareness is required. If this is a starting point, what techniques or tools can you recommend we suggest to our leaders? Great question.
To build self-awareness. Well, I think, go back to what we've said already. I think those sort of conversations where you have agenda-free check-in with human beings, that is a wonderful way to build not just self-awareness, because, someone asks you, Sven, how you're traveling? Oh, how am I traveling?
Yeah.
And what do I think about? Do I think about my thinking? Do I think about my feelings? Do I think about my physical state? It takes quite a while to answer someone if they show that interest in how you're going. So I think those conversations are really important. One that's really well validated, properly researched, and been consistent for decades, journaling. I think anyone in this group who seriously wants to become more self-aware, give yourself a little time just to write down what mattered through the day.
Great.
Big highs, big lows. Name the feeling, name what that feeling felt like in your body, and keep asking yourself this question: check body, check emotion, check mind. Journaling is safe and reliable and has all kinds of other well-being and productivity benefits. It doesn't need to be long, just simply sitting down with a piece of paper, not your device preferably, and just scribbling down some thoughts about the day, and check body, check emotion, check mind. You will grow your self-awareness.
That's cool.
The other one that's getting lots of press at the moment and was in the conference in abundance, some sort of meditation practice to get deeper than just slowing your breathing, and to get into a place where you can be peaceful and observe. Notice the thoughts, notice the feelings, notice changes in your body, and just watch it. So that definitely works, and it can really help people, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. And look, I think reading is always a great answer. Good literature, even fiction, is great. I've just read a book called Feeling and Knowing by Antonio Damasio. And, he is my kind of guide, but he's a neurobiologist. It's just too hard. It's really hard. You have to reread paragraph after paragraph. But I do think for those people who are genuinely interested, this whole process of consciousness is so topical and so interesting. We are close to solving it. So I would encourage people to read in that direction as well.
That's great. And those are some really good ideas of what people can do before bed without using their devices as well. Reading, journaling, sort of that white space time. I really like that. That's cool. I've got one here saying you must have worked with a range of people, which is very true. What consistent habits do you observe in people who seem to be the most resilient?
I mean, of course, we're all different. So, just speaking to everyone on the call, please respect your uniqueness.
Great.
But, and I think we talked about this, Brian, but this list is still my go-to.
Awesome.
And, every time I'm not sure about things, I double down on it. So, push that exercise thing and not negotiable. Push the sleep thing, get it right, get your breathing, accumulate those 8 minutes. Really working, keep your mind present, particularly now, you guys don't know when you're coming out of this lockdown. At least we know, they've given us dates for this and dates for that and dates for the next thing. I can plan. All right. So you've got to be really in the present when there's a high level of uncertainty, and then building the EQ. I mean, those to me are the non-negotiables. And I think in these times, don't make it too complicated. You know, I think every single one of you know, if you exercise, doing something you love in a natural environment, it cures all kinds of sins. You know, the science of this is just bulletproof for over a century. You know, likewise, the sleep, fix it. And be determined, you know, go and see someone and get the help you need to get these things nailed.
So important. I've got to,
and you know, maybe, you know, there's another thing. So this is what our data is saying at the moment, and we're just about to go through it again. But when you look at the top 10% of resilience scores across roughly 10,000 people, this is over the, you know, the 20 to early 21, the key things that were different between the top 10% and bottom 10% was that the top 10% scored very high on presence. It was non-negotiable. First time presence ever been in the number one position.
Wow. 2,
fulfillment. 3, focus. You know, they know it needs to get done and they're not multitasking. And interestingly, first time ever in the top 5 is bounce and optimism. So that's, you know, for those of you who are more analytically based, you know, this is the thing I think you've got to have that argument with any university. But this is quite interesting, right? Because this is you. Many of you have done this assessment and, you know, we're doing it in 7 languages with tens of thousands of people. I think that's pretty reliable. So, you know, ask yourself questions like, am I being present? Those match up. Am I enjoying what I'm doing? What can I change to find some joy? Am I being brutally focused? You know, what am I doing to bounce? And, you know, there are many ways to do that. And, you know, am I looking at the upside enough? So those would be 2 answers.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right.
Something you told me, Liz, is be where your feet are in terms of, you know, being present. And I think that's helped me personally in the things I do in life. And I think it's so important. And obviously being number one, be where your feet are, and it helps you just be present with those that are around you.
Stole that from Gilbert Enoka, one of the many words of wisdom from that man. Yeah, that's one I constantly remind myself. It's that little voice in my head. You know, am I where my feet are?
Because people can tell, right? When you're leading
yes.
them, they can tell if you're somewhere else when you're talking to them. And the reality is, your people and your businesses and that you lead, they won't open up if they can tell that you're not actually listening to that question of, so how are you today? Or how's your weekend? They won't sort of let you know the stuff that you probably want to.
How you doing, Brian? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They feel it. So does your husband or wife. When,
That's true.
When you're not present, so do your children. So yeah.
There's
So
a
true.
terrifying talk on this conference where they actually, I forget the number, something like 37% of young people are having sex while on their phones.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I got a bit of a shock and I didn't get the details 100% clear, but I'm going to relook at that one.
Wow, multitasking.
Ow.
I've got a question here I'd love to ask. So what do you think around the future of work, Sven? Do you have any thoughts around flexible working, 4-day work weeks when it comes to specifically wellness, but also productivity? It's been talked about in the SME world. It's not really the corporate side, but maybe, you know, SMEs. Is it beneficial? Is there any thoughts around it from your perspective?
Well, I think, you know, there has been plenty of evidence accumulating to show that many people can work very productively from home.
Totally.
And you can reduce various costs in business front if you do that. So I think a more flexible working environment is already a reality. You know, like a Microsoft example, no one's going back to the office, even though they can. 2, we also know that many people absolutely need the collaborative social environment of a workplace, a meeting place.
Yeah.
Now, you know, do we say that's a different style, more of an empathizer, whereas maybe the systematizer, you know, someone who's a bit more on that autistic side will do really well at home? We don't know that answer. But I think as a leader in an SME environment, you're going to have to open your heart to this one and think about who might be better more productive, and also more well working mostly from home. But who needs to be in the office? And, we're seeing some really interesting experiences of some organizations saying, well, look, by all means do 3 days at home, but I want you to come to the office 2 days. I think experiment. I would play with this. We really don't know the answer. And there are clearly some jobs that can be done virtually from anywhere in the world. We're seeing more and more of that, gig workers, if you like. And that is something, which just bear in mind, the bigger companies do a lot of, and maybe SME could take more advantage of. There are lots of platforms that allow you to access incredibly talented people from all kinds of places in the world who do amazing things at a fraction of the cost of employing someone to come to your office. So do look at that gig work. It is really changing the game. And certainly the big corporates have taken advantage of that. Yeah, it's a really interesting time. I mean, I think I have to leave it to young people to solve this. It's for our generation, it's like, wow, we could never have imagined it even 20 years ago.
Maybe this is related, but are you seeing anything in Aussie around doing, businesses that are doing interesting things to encourage people to return to the office when there's no reason why they can't?
No, I've heard people talking about it. And, let's have a day at work on these days. I've seen that quite a lot. But no, I haven't seen people, they're celebrating. I noticed in Sydney, lots of people going out on boats and, organizing social functions for the team, which I think that's a smart idea.
Yeah, interesting. We're sort of getting to the end, which is crazy because there's been so much gold in here, and I know we could go on for another hour if we wanted to, but I thought I'd pin this question. I'm so tired by December that I get sick over Christmas, and then I start the new year even more exhausted. What can I do now to change that? Maybe that's a good question to sort of
Fabulous
wrap up
question.
on.
Yeah. So look, I mean, again, you don't know precisely what's going on, but when you're working flat out, say towards the end of the year, and it's very common for us, and it can play havoc, not just with your health, but with your family. We're working really hard under pressure. We're driving the sympathetic system. We're lifting our body on cortisol, and the catecholamines. So you really are cranked up, and it can give you some temporary protection. But, if you think about someone who has a typically busy December, and rushing, to get everything sorted for the business, and then to get presents and Christmas trees and get on a holiday. You literally arrive on Christmas Day, you're a train wreck. So, your health may well collapse. And I think we all have had that experience. And you end up with a ghastly flu or something. But you know what? It can also end up being a very high conflict Christmas. Because everyone's expectations are up here, but your behavior is a bit basic, and people get really grumpy, and it can just be the final straw. You haven't been around because you've been working so hard. All of a sudden you're grumpy and there all day, and people wish you go back to work. So I think it's very real, and it comes back to what we've talked about. Double down on the stuff. Double down right now. Get yourself fit for Christmas. I had to learn that lesson when I was a young doctor, about 35. And I actually got very badly sick. And I'd spent an absolute fortune taking myself away to Fiji. I couldn't afford it at the time. And I arrived, and I had this beautiful arrival, and I woke up the next morning and I was wiped out. And I spent the whole holiday in bed. So I started to take that very, very seriously. So, every time there's an important break, I think you should prepare for it. Don't wait for the break to give you the rest you need. And, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your team. Think about all the people you're driving. If you're driving yourself like that, what are you doing to the rest of your staff? And are they all going to crash into their business, their homes at the end of the year? Come on, let's be a little bit more altruistic and sensible.
Yeah. It's that invisible spotlight. Don't think it's not on you, and people are watching the way you behave and the way you look after yourself, and they're taking a lead, or not. So, because it's not just going into Christmas, is it? I'm sure there's lots of people with us today who've experienced that, head into holiday and get sick.
Totally. Yeah. I think my head hurts from all the nodding. I don't know about you, Liz.
I feel like one of those bobbing things in the front of a car.
And, let's also, just as we come to the end, remember, we've got to move across that knowing doing gap. This is, and I think Icehouse, of all the communities I work with, does a fabulous job of this, but we know too much, right? The question in everyone's mind needs to be now, okay, what am I going to do? And what I'm going to do today that is different and meaningful for me and aligns with what I see as the priorities, and execute the damn thing.
Great. Yeah,
it's that review habit, isn't it, Sven, which we talk about, in the context of what we do. What did I do? Did it work or didn't it? Now what am I going to do with what I've learned? So that that knowing, doing, and reviewing is, incredibly powerful.
Totally. I've got a note here that you said earlier on, but education is powerful. It really gives us a strength to have the conversations that we need to level up in this wellness and resilience space, and to then pass that on to the people that we're leading and inside of our organizations. But just got a really cool note on the chat. Thank you everyone for the webinar. I haven't head off, but really appreciate the advice given. So that's cool. And we really hope that this has been helpful. Any last thoughts from you, Sven?
Well, I love the last question. I think, we all need a decent break. Yeah. And we don't actually know how this break's going to pan out exactly, but start preparing. Give yourself the gift of a proper holiday, do those basic things we discussed, and give yourself and your family some really good time. Because, next year is going to be we're going to have to crank things back up. It's not going to be easy. So we need our holidays, and that's definitely where it finishes. Start preparing, have a good rest, and make sure your people have a good rest, so that when you come back next year, you're ready for this new reality.
Wow. Yeah, it's absolute gold. Thank you so much, Sven and Liz, for the conversation around, wellness and resilience, how to look after ourselves and our people and our teams. And I'll be sure to follow up with everyone that's attended an email. But it's just, I've got to get those bullet points from your piece of paper up you send, so that I can send that through to them. And
so you do the modern thing, and you just photograph your screen.
Yeah, take a photo.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Got it.
So good. But yeah, we'll be sending out that information and a recording of this, and then be pushing it wide to those that couldn't make it a little bit later in December, or early December. But thank you, everyone. It's definitely, the first step or a great step of actually just jumping on this live Q&A and educating yourself. Great to see the comments coming in now in the chat that this has been really helpful. So appreciate your time, Sven. And I just wanted to put the ask out there that if this has been really helpful for you as a business owner and leader, feel free to drop me an email. Priya, maybe you could pop my email in the chat, but it's just b.stewart@theicehouse.co.nz. And I would love to know if you'd like something else along this, what we could provide you in terms of content that would be helpful for you as a business owner and leader. We'd love to hear your feedback on this, how you found the webinar and the Q&A. Any insight is really good for me for crafting stuff that's really valuable to our alumni and our community. So please do that. And yes, jump on, watch our latest podcast with Sven as he deep dives into those common themes and trends. But other than that, have a great rest of your day, and a massive thank you again, Sven and Liz, for joining us. And thank you. And to the wonderful work that Icehouse does, as again, leading and showing people how to do it. Yeah, it's great. Awesome.
Thank you for being a valued contributor to it, Sven, for a very long time. And thank you, everybody, for being with us. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. We'll end that live Q&A here, but appreciate your time.